The stars were silent. The escape pod floated alone in the black sky. Broken and burning from the outside, inside, a man lay unconscious, blood on his forehead. Hands shaking, his name was Ryan, a human, a smuggler, and a man on the run. He woke with a gasp as the pod entered a planet's atmosphere. The screen in front of him blinked red, words flashing, "Emergency landing." The pod shook violently. Fire streaked across the window. Ryan grabbed the sides, teeth clenched, heart racing. A few moments later, the pod crashed into the ground. The metal shell hissed and popped as it cooled. Steam rose from the surface. Ryan coughed and kicked the door open, falling out onto soft blue grass. Above him was a sky full of two suns. Around him were tall white trees, smooth and glowing from within. He stood up slowly, injured but alive. "Where am I?" he whispered. Suddenly, he heard voices. He turned and saw 5 figures walking toward him. They wore silver robes, tall and calm, eyes glowing slightly with pale light. They did not look angry, only curious. One of them stepped forward and spoke. "Welcome, stranger. What is your name?" Ryan hesitated for a second. If they knew who he really was, he could be arrested or killed, so he lied. "My name is Ryan. I'm a traveler. My ship was hit by an asteroid." He waited, ready for them to shout or attack, but they didn't. They looked at each other, nodded, and smiled. "You are safe here," one said. "This is Veritas." Ryan blinked, surprised. They believed him. But how? He had lied. Something was not right. They led him to a city made of crystal towers and floating platforms. The buildings hummed with soft energy. Everything was clean, quiet, and peaceful. As they walked, one of the locals, a young woman named Tira, explained more. "On Veritas, we do not lie. We cannot lie. Our minds are linked from birth to a neural field. We feel the truth." Ryan tried to act calm, but inside he was confused. If no one could lie here, then how did his lie go undetected? Why didn't their minds sense it? He listened as they explained their world. Their society was built on honesty. No crime, no betrayal, no secrets. Everything was open. Their technology ran on trust and neural connection. Ryan was given a room. In a tall crystal building, the walls were transparent, showing the stars at night. He sat near the window, holding a small device hidden in his jacket. It was a stolen neural jammer, a rare and illegal tool that blocked certain brain signals. That was why they couldn't sense his lie. That device was keeping him safe. For now, he looked out at the quiet city. Lights shining like diamonds. This planet was different, but beautiful and dangerous. He knew if anyone found out who he really was, they would turn on him. But if they couldn't detect lies, then maybe, just maybe, he had found the perfect place to hide. Or something more. The next morning, he walked through the marketplace. People traded goods with smiles and open promises. Children played without fear. There were no guards, no locks, no cameras. Truth kept the world in balance, and he was the only one who could break it. A group of locals gathered to hear him speak. They wanted to know about the stars, about other worlds. He spoke carefully, mixing truth with small lies. He watched their faces, no reaction. No one sensed it. He had power here, a power no one else had. Not strength, not weapons, but the power to lie. And in a world where no one could do that, it made him dangerous. It made him unique. That night, he looked at the neural jammer in his hand. He thought about leaving, about hiding it, but then he smiled. A slow, quiet smile. "No," he whispered. "I'm staying." He didn't come here to become a legend, but maybe that's exactly what he would become. Not by force, not by war, but by telling lies. And the first one had already worked. Ryan walked through the streets of Veritas. eyes wide, mind alert. Everything here felt calm, open, and too perfect. No one shouted, no one argued. No one hid anything. Children spoke freely. Merchants trusted customers without counting coins. There were no cameras, no police, no locks. On doors, he had never seen anything like it. And yet, he felt like a flame in a room filled with dry paper. Tira walked beside him, explaining the ways of her people. "We are taught truth before we learn to speak," she said. "Our minds are connected to the Veritas field, a network that links thought and honesty." Ryan nodded, pretending to understand. Inside his jacket, the neural jammer remained active. As long as it was on, he could lie and no one would know. But he had to be careful. Too much lying. Too fast and someone would notice the pattern. Veritas wasn't dumb, just trusting. They reached the Hall of Echoes, a large crystal dome where council meetings were held. Voices from outside echoed. Through the walls, Ryan looked up. The entire roof was see-through. The stars above shining bright. "We don't keep secrets," Tira said proudly. "Even government meetings are open to all, even your leaders." Ryan asked. "Yes," she smiled. "If a leader lies, we feel it immediately." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Has anyone ever lied here?" Tira's smile faded. "There was one many years ago," she whispered. "He went mad, his brain couldn't handle the field. He died within hours." That made Ryan pause. So the Veritas field didn't just expose lies. It crushed the minds of those who tried to lie. Then why wasn't it working on him? Was it just the jammer? Or was something about him different? He decided to test things. He began telling soft lies. Small things, nothing dangerous, like pretending he liked the local food, or saying he had siblings when he didn't. The people laughed, nodded, and believed every word. No reaction. No red alarms, no mind pain. Ryan started bending truth with ease. He wasn't just lying. He was shaping his own version of reality, and they were listening. He began speaking in public. Locals gathered around him daily to hear stories of other worlds. He described planets of fire, floating cities. Alien creatures, half were true. Half were made up, but here's the strange part. No one questioned him. His lies were taken as truth, and truth here had power. So his words changed minds. One day, a builder asked him, "If on other planets people lie and still survive, maybe we are too soft." Another said, "If truth can't protect us from war, maybe we should prepare like others do." Ryan saw something dangerous. His lies were planting doubt, and doubt was new to this planet. Then something unexpected happened. An old man came to Ryan's room at night. Hey, his name was Callan, a former member of the High Council. "I was like you," Callan said quietly. "Long ago, I discovered a way to lie." Ryan stiffened. "How did you survive?" "I didn't," Callan said. Tapping his head, "I had to remove my link to the Veritas field." Painful, but it worked. Callan's eyes were tired. "I watched my people build a world without fear," he continued. "But fear has a purpose, young man. So do lies." He handed Ryan a small device, old and dusty, but similar to his jammer. "Be careful," Callan warned. "They trust you now." But trust turns to hate faster than fire. The next day, Ryan gave a speech. In the central plaza, he told a story, one that was a complete lie. A tale of a coming war, of aliens planning to invade Veritas. He spoke with fear in his voice, eyes wide, hands shaking. The crowd gasped, panic spreading. They believed him completely that night. The Veritas Council met, for the first time in decades. They closed the doors, people demanded answers. And fear filled the air. Tira came to him, eyes full of worry. "Ryan," she whispered, "you changed something. They are afraid. They don't know what to believe anymore." Ryan stood at his window again. This time, the stars felt colder. Sharper, he had power now, the kind that changes worlds, and in a place built on truth. His lies were weapons, sharp, quiet, deadly. He thought about Callan's words. Trust turns to hate faster than fire. But Ryan wasn't afraid. He was ready to play the game, and Veritas would never be the same again. The city of Veritas no longer felt quiet. Not after Ryan's story about the alien invasion. People whispered in corners, questioned their leaders, watched the skies with fear, and all of it was based on a lie. A single, sharp lie, crafted by Ryan. Believed by everyone, he had done what no one in Veritas ever thought possible. He had made the truth optional. Now, Ryan wanted more. Not just influence, he wanted control. But he needed something powerful, something ancient, something buried. One name kept echoing in his mind: Callan, the old council member who had once removed his own mind link. The man who had warned him and still handed him a device. Old, dusty, and humming softly. That night, Ryan turned the device over in his hand. It didn't match any tech from Veritas. It was older, forgotten, and hidden for a reason. He activated it. A pulse moved through the room, low and silent. Nothing changed, or so it seemed. But when Ryan stepped outside, he felt it. The people walking by didn't glance at him the same way. They looked through him. They couldn't feel him anymore. He had become invisible to the Veritas field. It was more than the neural jammer. This wasn't just hiding lies. This was cutting him off entirely. He was now a shadow in a world of light. He smiled. The possibilities were endless with this power. He began exploring parts of the city that others ignored. Abandoned buildings, sealed libraries, places with no foot traffic, and then he found it. Deep beneath the ground, under the hall. Of echoes, a door locked with ancient symbols and tech no longer used. He held the device close to the door. It clicked, then opened with a slow, deep hum. Inside was a chamber filled with floating tablets, dim lights, and machines covered in dust. Everything was silent, untouched for centuries. In the center was a large screen, flickering faintly as he stepped forward. The screen lit up. A message appeared in glowing words: lies created this world before truth rebuilt it. Ryan frowned. He thought Veritas was always honest, but this message told a different story. He tapped the screen. It showed recordings of people long ago, shouting. Fighting, lying, chaos ruled Veritas once. There were wars, betrayals, assassinations. It was just like Earth. Then, a scientist named Cerise created the first version of the Veritas field, a system that blocked dishonesty, forced truth, and reshaped society. But not everyone agreed. A resistance formed. People who believed lies had value. They created devices to resist the field, like the one Ryan now held. Eventually, the resistance was crushed. Their tech was buried. Their names erased. Veritas was rebuilt as a world of pure honesty. At a cost, Ryan leaned back, mind racing. So this perfect society was born out of fear. They had lied to themselves to remove lies from others. He laughed quietly. How ironic. He downloaded everything onto a data crystal and left. But as he stepped out of the chamber, someone was waiting. Tira, her eyes were wide, her body tense. You weren't on the grid, she said, voice trembling. The field couldn't sense you. Ryan froze. I was meditating, he lied. But this time, she didn't smile. She stepped closer. I don't think that's true anymore. He could lie, he could silence her, but something in her voice stopped him. Why are you doing this? She asked softly. We trusted you. Ryan looked at her. He saw the fear, the confusion, the fading faith. This planet had been a mirror of truth, and he had thrown a stone through it. I came here to survive, he said honestly. But now, I think I'm here to change things. She didn't reply. She turned and walked away. That night, Ryan sat alone, the device in one hand, the data crystal in the other. He had knowledge no one else had. Proof that the truth had been forced on this world, that lies were once part of its roots and may be needed again. But the moment he released that knowledge, everything would collapse, the people would panic. Leaders would fall, systems would break. He didn't care. Not anymore. Veritas had built walls of honesty so high. They had trapped themselves inside. Ryan had found the key to the gate, and he was going to open it. With a lie, a beautiful, perfect lie. Ryan was no longer just a visitor. He was a ripple in still water. Every word he spoke sent waves through. Veritas, waves that did not stop. Whispers spread across the city. The stranger had secrets. The stranger told stories no one could predict. And most dangerous of all, the stranger could lie, but no one said it out loud. Not yet. The Council of Veritas met often now. Closed doors, worried faces. The neural field grew unstable in certain zones. People began reporting unclear feelings. Truth wasn't ringing as sharp as before. And somewhere in the shadows, a new group was watching. They called themselves the Gray Order, citizens who believed truth had become a prison. They saw Ryan not as a threat, but as a weapon. One night, Ryan found a message on his door, just 4 words. We know. Join us. No signature, no trace of a messenger. But something about the note felt different. It wasn't fear. It was an invitation later that night. In the underlevels of the city, Ryan followed the signal there, behind an old transit station. A man waited. His name was Kalen, eyes sharp, voice low. We don't want chaos, Kalen said. We want freedom from truth. Ryan asked, from forced truth. Kalen replied, from a world where thinking something wrong makes you guilty. They talked for hours. Kalen revealed others like him, thinkers, artists, ex-council members, people punished for thoughts, not actions. They had built machines like the one Ryan carried, but never used them fully. They were waiting for someone like him, someone who could lie and survive. Ryan didn't trust them completely. But he saw the opportunity. If he joined them, he'd gain allies. If he led them, he'd gain power. So he agreed. With one condition, no lies among us, except mine. The Gray Order followed him without question. They believed in him, or maybe in the change he represented. Soon speeches were whispered across hidden rooms. Ryan spoke of a new Veritas, one where truth was a choice. Not a weapon. The crowds grew larger. Not just rebels now. Ordinary people came just to listen. The field flickered in their minds, unclear, unstable, for the first time in generations. Doubt became normal, and yet danger followed. Tira watched from a distance. She still worked with the council. Still believed in the old ways, but her heart was torn. She saw the fear in people's eyes. She saw how the perfect piece of Veritas had turned cold, but Ryan. He walked through it like a storm, smiling, untouchable. One day, she cornered him. Is this what you wanted? She asked, a city that questions everything. No, he said, but maybe it's what they need. They don't need fear, she snapped. They need hope. Ryan looked at her with calm eyes. Sometimes the truth is the fear. He walked away. And Tira felt something break inside her. Later that week, the council made an announcement. They would install a new pulse beacon, one that would double the strength of the Veritas field. It would restore perfect detection, restore control. The rebels panicked. Kalen called an emergency meeting. This beacon will destroy our chance, Kay said. Once it's activated, Ryan's lies will be exposed, and all of us with him. Ryan listened, silent. He stood up and spoke just 2 words. Then stop it. They looked at him, confused. How? Kalen asked. We've never attacked. You have now, Ryan said. And just like that, war came to Veritas. Not with guns, not with blood, but with something worse, secrets. The Grey Order sabotaged the beacon days before launch. The entire city blacked out for 6 minutes. When the power returned, the field was weaker than ever. People cried in the streets. Some screamed that their thoughts felt empty. Others smiled. For the first time in their lives, their minds felt free. The council declared a state of crisis. Tira confronted Ryan once more. "You did this," she said, voice shaking. "You think you're saving us?" Ryan stepped closer. "I think you were never free to begin with, but this isn't freedom," she whispered. "It's confusion. Confusion is better than chains," Ryan replied, and behind him, the rebels stood tall, not with weapons, but with questions, and that was more dangerous than anything else. Collapse of order. The sky above Veritas was still blue. The towers still glowed. But the air had changed. People no longer smiled as freely, no longer spoke without thinking. Something had broken, not just the field, but the trust that held everything together. It began slowly. A child said they hated their teacher. But no one felt the lie. A merchant promised fair price, but overcharged anyway. Someone claimed to be sick to avoid work and got away with it in a society built on absolute truth. These were small crimes, but they echoed like thunder. The field flickered more often now. It glitched in crowded areas, vanished in old buildings. The council tried to reboot it, restore balance, but it was too late. Ryan watched from the upper levels. He stood on a balcony, looking down at the city. Kalen joined him, voice filled with awe. "It's happening," he whispered. "They're starting to lie." Ryan nodded slowly. He had opened the door, and now the storm was coming in. But not everyone celebrated. Many were afraid. They had never lived with lies. They didn't know how to question words. Didn't know how to detect danger without the field. Rumors filled the streets. Some blamed off-worlders. Others blamed the council. A few whispered the name Ryan in both praise and hate. Fights began in quiet alleys. Markets became tense. Even families started to fall apart because once you stop trusting everyone, you start doubting the people you love. Tira stood before the High Council, her face pale, her voice steady. "This isn't just collapse," she said. "This is transformation." But the elders were old, their minds built on centuries of truth. They saw no future in lies. One counselor slammed the table. "That man, the outsider, he must be stopped." Another nodded. "He carries forbidden tech. Influences minds, corrupts the young." They declared Ryan a threat to the planet. An order was issued, arrest on sight. But when enforcers arrived at his tower, they found it empty. He had already gone underground. Ryan didn't run. He simply moved, from public halls to secret tunnels, from speeches to symbols. Now, people wore gray bands on their arms, a silent mark of the rebellion. They didn't speak lies, but they didn't obey the truth either. One morning, a building exploded. No one died, but fear spread like smoke. The council called it terrorism. Ryan called it a message. This world cannot go back. He told his followers, it can only go forward. But even Kalen looked uneasy. "We wanted freedom," he said, "not fear." Ryan's eyes darkened. Freedom has a price, inside himself. Ryan knew he had crossed a line, but there was no turning back. Tira, meanwhile, began meeting secretly with those who still believed in the truth. A new group, the Lightkeepers. They didn't trust the council anymore. But they feared what Ryan might become. "He's not just bending the truth," one said. "He's shaping it." Tira listened quietly. She had, once, trusted Ryan. Now, she wasn't sure who he really was. That night, she found him again, deep beneath the crystal streets. "Where the field no longer reached, you said you came to survive," she whispered. "But you're not surviving anymore. You're ruling." Ryan didn't deny it. He looked tired, older, sharper. I gave them a choice, he said. No one gave me that when I crashed here. She stepped closer. They were safe. They were silent, he replied. Blind, obedient, living a lie in the name of truth. Tira didn't respond. She just looked at him, really looked, and saw not just the rebel, but the man who had once smiled at the stars. I'm warning you, she said quietly. Soon the people will turn on everyone. Not just the council, not just you, everyone. She walked away into the shadows, and for the first time, Ryan didn't know what to say. Outside, fires lit the horizon. Crowds marched with signs and masks. Some demanded truth, others demanded freedom. No one knew who to believe anymore. The collapse wasn't loud. It wasn't a single explosion. It was a slow, painful unmaking of everything Veritas stood for, and at the center of it, a man who had told a lie and made history with it. Trial of the century, the trial was not held in secret. It was held in the Plaza of Truth, the heart of Veritas, where every great law had once been declared, and every lie had once been caught. Now, a stage had been built. Not for justice, but for judgment. Ryan stood at the center, his hands unchained, his face calm. Thousands filled the plaza. Millions watched through glass towers and city screens. Above him, the crystal roof had been opened so the stars could see. Just like they had when he first arrived, a counselor stepped forward. Her voice echoed across the city. Ryan of Earth, she said, you stand accused of violating the Veritas code, of spreading falsehood, of weakening the field, and of turning our people against each other. Do you deny it? Ryan looked out at the crowd, eyes full of questions, fear, and curiosity. I don't deny it, he said. I claim it. Gasps filled the plaza. The truth sensors flickered around him. But no alarm sounded, no mental signal, no pain. The field could no longer read him, and they all knew it. The counselor narrowed her eyes. You broke our peace, she said. You introduced fear. I revealed it, Ryan replied. It was always there, just buried under silence. Another elder stood. You used forbidden technology. You influenced minds. You lied. Ryan stepped forward. Yes, he said, and the people listened. Not because they love lies, but because they were tired of only one kind of truth. The silence was thick. Tira stood at the side of the plaza, watching quietly. She didn't sit with the council, nor stand with the rebels. She stood between, like the rest of Veritas now. I gave them a second voice, Ryan continued. And when you only have one voice your whole life, the second one sounds like music. The council activated a memory screen. It showed clips of Ryan's speeches, the panic, the lies, the fear, the broken field, the growing rebellion. Is this your legacy? The elder asked, a planet in chaos. No, Ryan said. My legacy is choice. He turned to the crowd. You were told truth was freedom. He said, but it was a cage. You were told lies would kill us, but sometimes truth does that too. Murmurs filled the air. Not anger, not agreement. Something new, doubt, one by one. People in the crowd stepped forward, not to defend, not to attack, but to speak. A young girl, maybe 10. I lied to my mother, she said. She didn't feel it, but she forgave me anyway. An old man. I stopped believing the council long before Ryan came. A scientist, the field has made us safe, but also stagnant. The council was shaken. The voices were spreading like fire, like truth, or maybe like freedom. They turned to Tara. We need a verdict, one said. You've known him since the beginning. Tara walked slowly to the center. She looked at Ryan, and then at the people. I believed in the field, she said. I believed truth would save us, but truth without choice isn't truth. She looked at Ryan again. You brought fear, yes, but also awareness. Then she turned to the council. He should not be punished for making us see. A pause, a long, deep silence. Then the elder stood tall. Ryan of Earth. This council does not forgive you, but we recognize your impact. You will not be executed, but you will be exiled. Ryan nodded. He had expected worse. But, the elder added, the people will decide where you go. A vote was cast, not through the field, but through personal choice. The result came within an hour. Split, uncertain, exactly like the world Ryan had created. So they gave him a choice. Leave Veritas, or stay without influence. No speeches. No leadership, just silence. He chose silence, not because he was afraid, but because he knew. His voice had already changed everything. That night, as the stars returned and the crowd left, Ryan stood alone in the plaza. Tira came to him. You could have lied just once, she said softly. Told them you were sorry. Ryan smiled gently. I would have, but then they wouldn't have learned anything. She looked at him for a long time, then nodded and walked away. The trial of the century ended not with cheers, not with anger, but with silence. A silence full of choice, and that was more powerful than any truth ever spoken. The legend begins. Ryan vanished from public life. No stage, no speeches, no crowds waiting to hear his stories. He moved into a quiet dwelling on the edge of the city, far from the towers, far from the council, far from the chaos he had helped create, and still, the people spoke his name. In the schools, the teachers whispered his trial like a myth in the alleys. The rebels drew his mark on the walls, a single gray line through a circle of light. In the homes, parents warned their children. Be careful who you follow. Be careful what you believe. But belief had changed. Veritas had changed. The field still flickered. It no longer rang perfectly. It no longer judged instantly. It no longer made people feel safe all the time. But now, it also no longer made them blind. A generation grew up without the same rules. They learned to listen with their hearts, not just their minds, and somewhere deep inside, they knew it had started with him. Tira often walked the edge of the city at sunset. She didn't speak to Ryan, not at first, but she always passed his home and left something small. A flower, a data chip, a question written on paper. He never replied, but he always left something back. Their silence became a dialogue. Their distance became a memory. One day, a new council was elected, younger, more open. They didn't remove the field, but they gave people the option to step outside it, freedom by request, and still, no war came. No collapse, no fire, because the people had learned what fear was, and they had survived it. They had learned what lies felt like, and learned to face them, not run from them. One quiet morning, Ryan left his house. He walked to the center of the city. No one stopped him, no one followed. He stood in the same plaza where he had once been judged. He looked up at the sky. Same stars, same silence. He placed a small crystal on the ground, pressed a button, and walked away. The crystal began to glow. It played a recording, not of speeches, not of anger, but of a single sentence spoken in his voice. The truth is not a weapon, and lies are not always poison. It is the silence between them where real freedom lives. People gathered again, not to cheer, not to accuse, but to listen. And they understood. Years passed, children grew up hearing two kinds of stories: the history of truth and the legend of the liar. Only he wasn't a liar anymore. He was a teacher, a mirror, a storm that showed them the shape of their sky. Ryan lived quietly, never claimed a title, never asked for thanks. But when he finally left Veritas, not in exile, but by choice, the people gathered. They watched his ship rise into the sky. And for the first time, no one asked if he would come back. Because he had never really left. His lies still lived in their thoughts. Not as tricks, but as questions. And his truth whatever it was, still echoed in their silence on the wall. Outside the council hall, a new phrase was carved. Ryan, the one who lied, and taught us how to listen. The stars above blinked quietly, as if they, too, were remembering him, and somewhere on another world, in another city built on order, a story would begin again about a man who lied on a planet of truth and became a legend not by destroying a world, but by helping it see itself, not by speaking louder, but by daring to speak differently. And in the end, that was the truest thing of all.